We got to give people a minute to join because we don't want anybody to miss any of this outstanding intro music.
It's hard to be a halfback on the football field of life. But since I joined this holy team, I'm ready for the fight. I'm running with the word of God, and friend, there is no doubt that Satan just might knock me down, but he'll never knock me out.
'Cause I got Jesus in the backfield, calling all the plays. I got the Holy Ghost in front of me, clearing out the way. I got all the saints of paradise cheering from the side, and I'm headed straight to glory for a touchdown in the sky. Give me a J, give me an E, give me a J, E, S-U-S.
The holy clock is running down, there ain't much time to go. But we'll just keep on fighting till that final whistle blows. Well, Satan, you're defeated, boy, so tuck your tail and run. The game's not even over yet, but we've already won.
Well, the whistle blew and I was late off the line, as usual. That's why I was not a starter on my flag football team in elementary school, which was my first and only year of semi-professional gridiron. Instead, I said I want to do the only thing tougher. I want to be a moderately notable internet radio host, at which I've been moderately successful. But it's PresbyCast. This is a show where I've been assured that I will talk a lot, so challenge accepted. We'll see, but should be good. As always, Chortles is here. I'm here. Our guest and additional hangers-on continue to leech this show of listenability, but we'll see how things go. So, it's, as always, great to be here. Chortles, I'll throw it off to you to introduce our stunning panel, and we'll see if we can't get into some trouble.
Well, we've got two notables joining with us tonight.
And Sean Morris.
Well, but I mean, I learned this week, stunningly, that Sean Morris played 3 years of junior high football. And I said, you know, Sarah, you probably know more about football than Sean, so you should come on. But I was corrected swiftly. And when I told Resby, he prophesied, oh, yeah, it was junior high, wasn't it? And he said, yes, it was. But this is not necessarily a sports show, but, you know, about the little local land grant college near to me with the little football stadium. They wear orange. I think they had their first day of practice yesterday. So it's in the air. This is not an Orange Tennessee t-shirt. This is a deeply rooted conference for one of my Baptist friends. But no Baptist tonight. We've got Presbyterians wall to wall. Sean Morris, our friend, is helping us, but we needed extra help to interview so notable a figure as one Wilson Van Hooser, one of the more interesting PCA teaching elders I think you're going to find. And you were on our show, Wilson, unmute yourself. You were one of our GA shows.
Yeah, I think it was the last night. Yeah.
Yeah, sprawled on Sean Morris's hotel bed. He wasn't there, but he let us use the room.
Me, Job, and BC. I mean, it was just reminded me of youth ministry all over again.
Yeah, but surely. Well, no, it wasn't smokier in there, was it? I don't guess it was. But no, it was a good time. And right then I knew we're going to have this guy back on. You did an interview with the Presby girls, I think, that we rebroadcast that got a lot of listens. You have a podcast called Gospel Gazing.
Yep.
And I have a link there'll be a link to that in the show notes. and they can probably find your Substack or blog easy enough as well. Although I don't think I linked to it. So, well, we'll just we should say at the outset, Sean, you and Wilson are friends. Tell us about your how far back you all may go.
Oh, we go back what, weeks, Wilson? Yay,
Hey.
even months.
Yes, I mean probably down to the minute.
I think so. I think
whatever. How long GRN has been and getting to know each other through there, and
I think I met you in fall, autumn of 2022, and then we've worked on a few things here in the last couple of years together. Spent some time together. It's been great. I think probably most recently, was the shared interview we did, which you put up on your podcast a couple of months ago,
man.
On preaching with Dr. T. David Gordon, which was a fantastic interview.
He was gold on that, man. I wish we could have kept him going. It was great.
All right. Well, you all are both young PCA pastors of some notoriety. Let's just put it that way. And it's good to have. I enjoy hanging out with you younger guys. For some reasons, you all let me do that.
Despite your better judgment.
Right. Resby, he's about your age. He keeps me young too.
You might have more of the lingo than I do at this point.
Well, maybe. So, we always start, Wilson. We want to hear about your authentically broken faith journey. We want plenty of brokenness because you got to be relatable.
Yep.
And like most people in the PCA, I'll bet you weren't born into the PCA. But tell us how you got here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Well, let me
Are
break
you cradled?
the trend.
Are you cradled?
Covenant child here.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I love the Machen horn. It's my favorite. Yeah, my parents. I was baptized at Eastwood Presbyterian Church in Montgomery, Alabama, and we were there for, I can't remember it. I was still very young, maybe 2 or 3 years old, maybe 4, and then we went to Trinity Pres in Montgomery, and grew up there my whole life. So I grew up hearing Presbyterian Reformed theology, but I was not a believer until I was 20 years old. And actually, that has really helped how I have encouraged parents with wayward children and helping them trust that, the family worship and the catechesis and bringing them to church, just, trust that these are the Lord's means of grace. So I did grow up PCA, and when I was first converted, and we can probably get to this in a little bit, but when I was first converted, I went into the Baptist captivity for a little bit, flirted with the enemy.
There you go. You can't. All your privilege was canceled. Yeah. You started with a clean slate. Okay.
Yep. So I was really going well there, and so yeah. And then the Lord, and I'm actually very thankful for that, because I very much needed to be convinced biblically. What did I really believe? And so I've just been thrilled to be in PCA.
So tell us about that whole thing. You're in college, and you had a totally normal college experience, except that you were a big time football player, which would. Tell us growing up. I mean, my dad was a coach, not a football coach. He was a basketball coach, and he had, when we were at a school where they had football, they make the basketball coaches come out and help. Yeah. And he always said that he coached the student managers, and he also coached fumbles and penalties. Is what he did. But
yeah, so I went to it was a 4A school in Montgomery, and it was actually it was the Covenant School of Trinity Pres Church. But we played public school ball. Let the record state, and but I grew up thinking basketball was my thing. I remember one time after losing a tragic YMCA 5th grade playoff game, make or break it in life. And I am driving home just weeping in the car. And I say, Dad, The NBA is all I got. If I don't make it to the NBA, that's it. Well, it's funny. I did not make it to the NBA.
Well, especially now with Big Three out there, you could have had a whole career renaissance.
Hey, look, this dad bod might be tempted to get back in shape for the Big Three. So
it's an Olympic sport now.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That is very true. So I was playing multi-sports, and it really wasn't until my junior year where I had a good season. And it kind of dawned on me of like, oh, wow, I'm starting to get some letters and be looked at. And before my senior year, I had an offer from Tulane and ended up committing there. And so I went down to Tulane in 2009. And just for context, for people to remember, it's only 4 years after Katrina. And so it was very fascinating to see how much New Orleans was still changing from 2009 to when I graduated in 2013. It was still very much recovering. And so that's how I ended up down at Tulane in New Orleans to play football there, and ended up going my 5th year at Troy, and it was not as good of a football season there. But that was the season where the Lord really surrounded me with godly young men who were very actively pursuing the Lord. And I mean, very much an evident sign of his providence and growing me in sanctification. But I did. Go ahead.
Were you still a Baptist then?
I think I was still probably still flirting with the Baptist captivity. And I had, guys like Stephen Lawson were really influential to me. And
we usually don't allow his name to be spoken on this show, but we're going to make an exception.
Yeah, well, all right. Just let me have just limited time in purgatory. So, but he was. It's interesting. He was the first one I started listening to when he was a dedicated time of studying the attributes of God. And when he was talking about sovereignty and talking about the love of God, the wisdom of God, I was like, hold on, I got to drink this in more, and started just getting a ton of books. But even at Tulane, and Tulane, when I was there experientially, I did not know more than 30 Christians in a school of about 7,000, 8,000. I mean, it was a barren land.
Well, you were in Louisiana. You said they were rebuilding. I think they've been rebuilding ever since they started that place down there.
Well,
it's a rebuilding project.
Yeah. One just truly, the Lord very much has used this guy for many years, and he just took a senior pastor job. It's in Georgia, but he was because of what many campus ministries. So he was our BCM guy. He was also every team's team chaplain, a guy named Corey Olivier. And he really, when I became a believer and came to campus the second semester of my sophomore year, he just really began to disciple me, and he met with me, and he's just been a massive influence through the years. And so he really was very much a sanctifying presence for many ways. And there weren't many down there, so it was great to have those guys. But I was converted actually in our PCA church in Montgomery. Same preacher. Everything was the same, building and all that. The only difference was I wasn't sitting in the balcony. I was a little more holy, and I was sitting towards the front down below. So I think that must have been it. But it was one of those times where, and it wasn't like this, the skies crack open and, it was just, that's true. And then since then, it just kept growing in its sweetness, and studying John 15 of Jesus being the vine. I just being like, I've never heard this before. And then my parents being like, yes, you have. It's just now making sense. So.
All right. So you're at Tulane, and you've got a 5th year.
Yes. So I
you
go to
Troy, which is in Alabama, not far from where you live.
Yeah. And so my junior year on the field at Tulane, I was the leading receiver. And that's when the NFL began to be like, okay, this actually might be a potential. I knew I would test pretty well at like pro day and all that. And so I had a feeling, I was like, man, if I stay healthy and finish out a career decently, I might have a chance to get on, at least to get in camp somewhere. And there were various factors that led to this, one including my mom's health at the time. But when I graduated from Tulane, I had one more year of eligibility, and it just seemed like the best situation overall to move closer to home. So I went to Troy and played that year with them. It actually was not nearly as good of a athletic season. It was pretty trying and difficult, but at the same time, I would not have traded it because of so many of those guys that I lived with and lived around who were really pursuing the Lord, and they were just feeding me books, and the Lord really furthered that call to ministry. So it was certainly a blessing, but not the type of blessing that I'd made the move for sports wise.
All right. So at this point, I mean, is there an RUF at Troy?
We had campus outreach, and actually, that's
out of Briarwood.
I believe
Yeah.
so. And there's a great PCA church there, almost right on campus, and I was going there for a little bit, but then I was also trying out this other church, and that's certainly, I wish I would have spent more time at the PCA church there in Troy, but I was, Sunday morning worship and midweek stuff and Bible studies, and then there were FCA things. It was kind of funny. I ended up getting really involved in not just with our football FCA, but with the baseball team's Bible study. And
baseballs, those guys are rough, man. Those are animals.
Yeah, you got to be careful with those guys. But it was, I think they brought me in to tell my testimony, and then they just kept inviting me back. And then at one point, when I was interning at Trinity Pres in Montgomery, I was going down there to lead the Bible study for a little bit, and that was a really great situation. But that was really pivotal that the Lord used, because here were other athletes who were really vigorously searching the scriptures and wanting to wrestle with the truth and sharing life with each other. All the brokenness, raw, uncut testimonies, put all your buzzwords in there. But it really was. It was just guys who were just incredibly encouraging and pursuing Christ. And so that was certainly it was worth everything as the Lord was solidifying that call to ministry. And then turned out, just in, how the Lord likes to do stuff, I ended up having an opportunity. So I ended up going through pro day at Troy, and then they also let me do one at Tulane since I graduated from there. And I had gone through all the testing for that, and I tested really well, and various things happened, and had some workouts here and there. And
I gather you're faster than you look now.
Yeah, I know. Like when you see me and this, I'm a short white guy, and you see this body right now that's screaming with athleticism, and
it's more moaning, I think.
Yeah, moaning, deep longings,
groanings too deep for words.
Yeah.
The birth pangs of athleticism.
It's funny when people, it's actually really funny. And shout out to Derek Bright, who just recently found this out, which has been great. It's funny when people find out, and then often when people find out, they will say, "Were you like a kicker or a punter?" And I say, "Well, that's pretty funny, because at the Patriots, the kickers and the punters were all bigger than me." So, So I was fast. I ran a 4.38 40.
Wow. Okay. Here we go.
Yeah, I know. And that was always really funny because I just looked like the most unassuming wide receiver ever. And but I was actually the deep threat for especially my last year when I was at Tulane, and did several of that with the Patriots, and we'll get there in a second. But I had jumped my best vertical ever was a 41.5. I was a 10.7 broad jump. I think my bench press for 225 reps was 16 or 17 at pro day. It was a 409 shuttle. My best squat was 500 on the dot. Funny story, actually, how that I missed on 495 and then got 500. That's a funny story. And my best
not that anyone's counting, not that you don't remember every detail of all this.
Hey, man, look.
I was going to say I missed on 500 once, but got 502 like with ease.
Yeah. So, but now I'm just like trying to, not whenever I walk somewhere, I try to hold my breath so it doesn't look like I'm breathing very heavily. So, or when I climb the 3 stairs in our church to go and preach, I just, make it look like, he's still, So, yeah, exactly. That's it. So, yeah, I tested well, and there was actually something crazy happened to get me a little bit more publicity than was probably going to normally happen. And I think it's just kind of bizarre. I get invited to Tulane to go to their pro day. And so I run the 40 and then I run routes. And old LSU quarterback Jordan Jefferson is throwing to us. And we're in the Saints facility and we're running go routes. And in the Saints facility, the roof is the indoor facility. It's all white, and then it's got the big lights up there. And we had practiced there when I was at Tulane. And often whenever you had you're catching punts or kickoffs, when the ball would go really high, you would often lose it in the lights. So I'm running a go route, and what you're supposed to do is first 30 yards, you're just sprinting as hard as you can. And instead of looking back for the ball, you're supposed to just look up, and it's supposed to be right around here. And I look up for the ball that Jordan threw, and I'm like, it's not there. And I realize the ball's behind me screaming down. In my mind, I'm literally thinking, I can try to slow down and try to turn around and catch this ball and most likely fall. Or, and I'm telling you, it was like in the Matrix. It was like very slow while it was happening full speed. Or I can run and adjust a little bit and hold my arms behind my back and catch it. And I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a catch. I would more so describe it as the ball was lodged between my arms and my back. And I'm running into the end zone, and like there's a bunch of like my former Tulane teammates and just life friends and at pro days it's like a golf event. It's super quiet, and these guys go, "Ah!" And I'm literally thinking, I do not have that skill, but I am gonna use this and make it seem like that's exactly what I meant to do. So that became kind of a story that kind of put me more on the radar, and so anyway, that was just kind of a crazy story.
That scream was very Howard Dean-esque, by the way. That was impressive.
Yeah.
So what was it? Is it fair to say it was an immaculate reception?
Yeah. It was an immaculate reception from someone who was just completely raw and broken and all that.
Thank you for being so vulnerable with us.
Yeah, I hope I feel heard.
Don't ever do that again.
So I end up going from there, and the draft happens in 2014, and I was getting a lot of interest. I'd had a private workout with the Saints, and it's funny because the Patriots actually talked to me the least, and it was really weird. I get a call and they're like, "Hey, what's your email?" And I'm like, "Oh, I don't know." And it's probably still some like childhood email or whatever. And I was probably like super embarrassed. And they're like, "Okay, we're going to send you a personality profile. Can you fill this out?" "Okay, thanks, bye." And I'm like, this could be a fake phone call. And that's all it was. I fill out this personality profile test and it was just random stuff. And it, like, one of the questions was like, which one of these is art? And it's like a painting or a motorcycle. And I'm like, the painting, right? Is this a trick question? They actually don't pick me up. The draft ends 7th round. Right after that, teams scramble to pick up the free
So are
agent.
you at home watching the draft? You're not
Yeah.
there.
I'm not there.
You
I
didn't
wasn't
buy a
that
$700 suit and top hat like some of these
Oh
guys.
man,
are
I
now.
think I'm probably chilling, eating some like Easy Mac or something like that. No, I can't say that because my parents probably they probably made something say. But if it was just me, I'd just Easy Mac. Yeah, and so anyway, the Green Bay Packers had called and they originally picked me up. And so in May of 2014, I fly from Montgomery, Alabama, where it's 90 degrees, to Green Bay, where it is 30 degrees. And that was a difference. And did rookie minicamp with them. And
that was in May.
That was in
30
May.
degrees,
Yeah.
30 degrees in May. We
right.
can't gloss over that.
Yeah, we didn't have 30 degrees in any month in Montgomery. And so I go there, don't make it, and then I'm thinking, well, maybe that's the end. I don't know. And then
let me ask you. Did it matter that much? I mean, what was your perspective? Were you living and dying on this, or the chances sort of gotten you excited, or you had?
Yeah, at this point, I was really convicted that the Lord was calling me into ministry. I had already preached about maybe 4 or 5 times in my last year at Tulane and at Troy. And it just began to, it was like a massive burden that continued to grow. And I knew, I was like, I think whenever football's done, I'm going to go into ministry. So I was hoping I could keep playing and we'll see what happens. I still had big dreams, but I knew at the end, that's what was going to be there.
Okay. So you work out with Green Bay and then what?
I work out with Green Bay, go home, and I volunteer at our PCA church, Trinity Pres in Montgomery, and with Kurt Cooper, who was the youth minister there, and who's now the senior pastor. And it's just hilarious. I think I worked with Kurt. I volunteered with him for, I think, 2 or 3 days, because then the Patriots called. And I was like so excited for this church internship, and we're going to go do RYM youth camp. And I'm like, this is great, getting into ministry. And then I get a phone call from my agent, and he's like, hey, you need to be on a plane in like 16 hours. And I'm like, okay. So I'm scrambling to pack. And it happens like that. It's wild. And I go up, and I pack like probably for a week, because I'm like, I have no idea how long I can be up here. And I ended up staying in Foxborough for 4 months. So my parents had to ship me some clothes. So it kind of just was a crazy, just literally living one day at a time. Like, I told the guy, one of the young guys who worked for the Patriots, they called him the Grim Reaper, because whenever he'd come into the locker room, he'd be coming to call guys to come get cut. So it was never good when you saw him. And so I'd heard this about him, and I saw him, and I said, hey dude, like, look, I understand my position. This is going to be a long shot. So like, when it's my time, just come over and just nod at me. Cause Because I just was thinking, I was like, any day now it's going to happen. And for 4 months, just kept happening. I was like, I guess I'm still here. So I do run across, obviously, this is 2014. So the team that would go on to beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, that was the team that I was on. So my rookie class was Jimmy Garoppolo, James White, Malcolm Butler.
The Baptist theologian?
You said what?
James White was in your draft class?
Yeah. It's crazy. He's like Benjamin Button.
Derek Bride's favorite theologian.
He's smiling so big right now. You just warmed his heart.
Super proud, But had a fantastic group of guys. And I kept playing pretty well. And even at one point, there were several of the website, blog sites, whatever, that were saying, some were saying like, he's going to be a practice squad guy. Some were saying he's going to be a 53-man roster guy. And I frankly was even surprised at how well I was playing there. And but what was interesting was at the same time, while this is happening, I am literally having probably the hardest time spiritually that I've ever had. I'm wrestling with, I think the Lord's calling me to ministry, and it is becoming a massive burden. The pressure of trying to keep going day after day. And then actually a huge influence here was I was reading, don't be triggered by this, but I was reading a lot of Stephen Lawson's books, The Long Line of Godly Men. And he just, book after book, I'm learning about sovereign grace. And a massive thing began to happen where I'm learning more and more about sovereign grace and trying to find that identity in Christ. But yet everything about my life right now is, if you're gonna make it, you better do good. And if you don't do good, you're gonna get cut. And so it was a incredibly taxing, trying time.
It was law, not gospel.
Oh, yeah, that's it. It was only law. And it was only first use of the law. Shout out to Spin, who's working on stuff on that right now. But it really was. It was so bad that there was a time where I was playing really well, and we had like two guys who were hurt. So I was playing really well, and we had two like the starters who were hurt. I was not a starter, but there was a season for about 3-4 weeks where like I was starting to kind of rotate in there with some of those guys, and I was catching, several passes from Tom, and
as one does.
That would be Tom Jones. Is that his name?
Very good quarterback, Tom Jones.
Tom Brady for our European listeners.
Yeah.
I loved him in Cheers. It was great.
But while this is happening, I am, and not many people know this, I'm calling my parents and I'm calling my chaplain from Tulane, and I'm telling them I'm ready to quit. And really, because a lot of that was the burden of ministry, but yet also the, how does all this make sense with like everything around me all the time is law, but yet I'm learning so much more about the gospel and just that kind of Luther-esque, that Anfechtungen. And I mean, it was, and then on top of that, you're working 14-hour days during training camp. And so it really was just quite the mixture, but I had really good mentors in my parents and this guy, Corey Olivier, and our team chaplain for the Patriots, Jack Easterby, was fantastic. And they were all saying, look, be faithful where you're at right now. You'll let the Lord determine if you get cut and all that, then think about it, but you need to be faithful now. And then, man, that was a really good lesson. So I go through there, and I'm watching Gronkowski win every single dance contest in the locker room, and he's not a good dancer, but he's an entertainer.
The Navy Federal Credit Union spokesman.
Yes, yeah, that's the guy from the Navy Federal.
He played
Credit
football.
Union. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, maybe he might have played football. I can't remember. But
crazy.
Definitely Navy Federal Credit Union. So, and yes, as my something on my name tag here that I put down is, yes, I did have a nickname from Tom Brady, and my nickname was Doogie. And Brad, you know why my nickname was Doogie?
That was the only dance you knew.
No, well, no, it was out. You're right. It was out. No, here's why. This is great. I was nicknamed Doogie after Doogie Hooser, the teenage doctor, and here's the reason why. Because I look like a young white guy. So there you go.
Well, you had the privilege and all the equipment.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right?
I was just assuming it's because he couldn't pronounce your name, Doogie Howser. Yeah. Wilson Van Houser, Doogie Howser.
Yeah. Well, what was hilarious was I was so known as Doogie. I mean, everybody, like no one called me Wilson. Everyone called me Doogie. So much so that when we have a break in, I think like late or early July, Julian Edelman is going back to California, and he's back home, and he's at some party, and he tells me this later, and he's at some party, and some people from Tulane are there, and they come up to him, and they're like, "Hey, do you know Wilson Van Hooser?" He's like, "Who? Wilson Van Hooser?" He's like, "Who is that?" He's another white receiver on the Patriots with you. And he's like, "Are you talking about Doogie?" Yeah, I know Doogie, but that's like how enmeshed it was. So it was funny. I have a jacket of mine, a sport coat of mine that has Doogie on like the back collar.
Do you preach in it?
Huh? Yeah. Hey, maybe. So who knows? But there were some like super fun things that I was able to like do. Like I met the Dude Perfect guys. They were filming at the Patriots stadium, and went up to them and talked with them, and they were awesome. I emceed. Me and Jimmy Garoppolo were the MCs of the Rookie Talent Show. And I do have to say this. This is a claim to fame. In the 8 years before I was there, the rule, because the Patriots we did not do hazing. No hazing. And the Rookie Talent Show was the big thing. And so if you were not legitimately funny, you had to wake up the next morning at 5 a.m. and come up with all brand new material to do that night. And you would do it every night until you were legitimately funny. For 8 years, every single rookie class had to do it at least twice. In my year, we only did it once. But came with a cost, because I only saw Bill Belichick smile twice in 4 months. And one of the times he smiled was whenever we were running gassers at the end. And then he made the rookies run 10 extra gassers, and we were just vomiting everywhere. And he is on top of this. It was like a 15, 20 degree incline hill, and we're running up. He's standing at the top, swinging his whistle, and just the biggest smile. And we are just yakking everywhere. And it's because someone did a monologue on Bill and just crushed it. So I could go on. It's fun.
So vomiting misery is what brought joy to Coach Bill Belichick. Now, my dad, the high school basketball coach, he would make them, they would have to run until someone threw up.
Yeah.
And they would have to. I always said he was more like any football coach than any basketball coach in the world, because they would practice, the charge drill. They would.
Yeah. They would run
over each other with no pads and helmets. and someone had to bleed at some point before they could end that drill. So I get it.
That, that drill is why NBA players are known as being so much tougher than NFL players.
Yeah, the antics. I'm just amazed that people think that that there's flopping in the NBA. I just think they don't respect the game. So
they just don't know what collision feels like,
Yeah, they don't. It's unbelievable. So anyway, I do that, and I ended up getting cut. And what was interesting is I had one bad week. I had just come off. We were playing against the Please Don't Cancel Me, the Washington Redskins, formerly known as Washington Redskins. But
is
for
this exhibition or regular season?
Yeah, exhibition. And
okay.
You mean the Washington football team?
Yes, correct.
Love those guys.
But just for historical purposes, the Washington Redskins, and so I have a catch in that game, but then the next week versus the Eagles, we're practicing against them all week, and I had a bad week. I was still able to make it another week, but when I had that bad week and another receiver had a good week, like that was the nail in the coffin. And so I got cut, and then I ended up going to another league called the FXFL.
Resby loves the garbage league, so I'm turning it over to him now.
Garbage football is the greatest entertainment that we have.
Oh man, talk about an exhilarating lifestyle playing in that league. But I had some once again phenomenal teammates on that team, and guys like Taj Boyd from Clemson was there. Other guys like Carson
famous brother of.
Oh, who's his brother?
Or he's the famous brother of Tia and Tamara Mowry. I'm pretty sure, like of Sister, the television show. I'm almost positive.
If he is, this is amazing.
Hold on.
I had no idea. Yeah.
I can share
why
I
need to fact that.
Didn't Taj make a few appearances on their show when he was really little?
Are y'all thinking about the same Taj Boyd from Clemson?
The only other Taj I know is the.
Gosh, who that now? But the real question is, who the heck am I thinking of when I made that reference?
Well, probably Taj Mowry, since it's Tia Mowry and Tamara Mowry.
Yeah.
Oh man,
this is unbelievable.
What a brutal turn of events! I can't believe that I was the one who said something stupid and got it wrong.
I was about to say the only other Taj I know is the Taj Mahal. So that was my guess.
Get a load of Gandhi over here.
But we were so my wife and I, we had dated at Tulane, and then we had broken up, and then when I was playing in this other league, we had gotten back together, and so this is a season where the Lord's very much weighing on our hearts that seminary is soon. How soon? Not quite sure. We'll see what happens in the off season. But seminary soon, and we know that. We know we're heading towards engagement. And so we were trying to really wrestle with it. And so when it was after the Super Bowl, when I'd finished the season in the other league and then didn't get any other calls. And, this is a great comment. My wife just said, I only date trash football players. That's who I married. And she's awesome.
Atta girl, Grace. Atta girl.
That a girl,
it looks like you married up like every other PCA.
Pastor. Let's very much be honest. So she played volleyball at Tulane, and literally, I almost physically married up because she is around my same height. True story.
You outkicked your coverage.
Yeah, and she spiked a volleyball in my face one time when we were playing sand volleyball. So
guys, I don't get any of these hockey references. Could we?
So,
is there a term for like the opposite sex that hangs out at trash football leagues? Like beer league hockey has, the rink bunnies. Like, is there Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah. I think, well, so here's actually, we're 2 years apart. She was finishing up. She had way better things to do than watch my trash football league. She was finishing up her volleyball, her senior season in volleyball at Tulane. So way better things to do than to watch us play in Harvard Stadium with 30 people there. So anyway, so we're getting close and to being married, and we ended up really thinking, and we were like, look, what are we going to do? Because the CFL was an option, the Canadian League, the Arena League was an option. It was also an option just to keep waiting around to see what could happen with the NFL. And I just really felt the burden for ministry. And we both felt like it was wise to go to seminary. And so we had decided that was what we were going to do going into the fall 2015. And this is really cool, and just kind of a fun little close to a chapter. But a couple of weeks after we had decided that this is what we're going to do, I actually had, ironically, because I had a bad week against them, the Philadelphia Eagles had called and said, hey, we need a receiver. And I essentially said, oh man, well, thank you, but no thank you. I'm going to go to seminary. What was so funny is the guy who had called me was like, oh dang, well dude, can you pray for me? And obviously most guys are waiting around for those calls. And so it it was a fun ending to the chapter, but I was doing the internship then for real that time at Trinity Pres Montgomery, and just was having a great time. And my wife and I were engaged at the time, and then we got married at the end of the summer and went up to Gordon Conwell Seminary in the Boston area at first, and then transferred down to RTS. But I'm sure you might want to ask more questions.
Well, so
yeah, why didn't you just go to Westminster and sign with the Eagles? I mean, the obvious logistics are there.
Do both. Be a bivocational NFL pastor who figures out the Sabbath somehow.
Well, yeah. So that's my question. So
yeah. It's an important one.
We have a few old school Presbyterian listeners, and we have Sean Morris here and me, and people are going to ask, what about the Lord's Day?
Yes.
And the NFL. I wrote an article. I wrote an article about Frank Reich. And I wasn't altogether happy with how people were making a big deal about when he became, went from seminary to the NFL, and the Lord's Day was never mentioned. And I think I wrote another one on the about the history of Sunday sports, how it came in. The reason football was on Sunday was because baseball already owned Saturday, etc.
Yeah.
But what about that? I mean, was that always sort of or were your Reformed convictions just sort of developing? I mean, had it always been a stress, or was it just kind of growing?
Yeah, I was very much a functional 90% Ten Commandment guy. And I frankly.
You mean a Baptist? Is that what you meant?
Yeah. You said it. As he takes a sip of coffee. Yes.
Baptists are people too.
Oh, yeah. RTS. Shout out to Ligon.
Might not be coffee in there either.
We will see. So yeah, I was very much learning what Reformed theology was, authentically learning what Reformed theology was. And I just kind of tried to ignore the Sabbath and just think that it wasn't as relevant. And the Lord just kept surrounding me with guys who would continue to teach me. And
who was that?
Oh man, well, I think it was a massive combination of guys like from Pear Orchard Prez when I had worked there, and we'll get there in a second. But Carl Calberkamp, Caleb Cangelosi, John Kwasny, obviously seminary professors. Bruce Bogus in his class on the ethics was really good. Just being around people like Ligon and Guy Waters. Shout out to the bow ties. And just being around actually great Sabbath experiences. So it was not just the doctrine, but it was also the doxology of it and the discipleship of it.
So you went from Gordon Conwell after a year to Jackson RTS?
Yes. So I was persuaded by a minister at the time to, quote, come up to the big leagues. Because it's a lot, it's easy to do ministry in the South. Oh,
you mean, because Ron Beasy was down there? Was that the?
Yeah, they said Beasy's got it. Like, if just make sure, don't worry about him. Like, he's running it. And so I went up there and I did. There were some bright lights up there. But then I just was struggling with various theological issues, along with feeling the call, thinking that I'm probably going to minister back down south somewhere. And
so you were at Gordon Conwell for about a year.
Yes, and they.
So let the record show that you have been to Boston in the fall.
Hey, I saw the trees change colors. That'll do.
That was a VeggieTales reference for all you non-millennial children out
there.
He played in Foxborough. Of course, he was in Boston in the fall.
Thank you, Resby. Thank you.
Yeah. So they had a panel one time of 4 professors, and the discussion was the inerrancy of Scripture, and I was already wrestling with a lot of things, and I was having some concerns about various different approaches, and only one of the 4 professors on this panel had defended inerrancy, and that was kind of the last straw where I felt like I need to go and soak in rich, full deck of cards, Reformed, Presbyterian, Calvinism, put in all of our buzzwords. And so RTS Jackson very much was the spot. And as I love to make sure J.R. Biggs knows, who is now the RUF campus, he's the RUF guy here at Oklahoma State. I like to tell him Jackson is the flagship campus. You're welcome, my Charlotte, Orlando.
It is the mothership. It's the mothership.
It is the mothership.
Amen.
So I went there
and now has drinkable potable water.
Yeah.
We're very excited about that.
A beautiful new location too. It is stunning. It is just, it's unbelievable.
Perry McCall has done yeoman's work with those donor dollars, and we now have drinkable water in the water fountains. We're very excited. We're very proud.
Rolling. So
RTS NIL, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm waiting for my royalty check. I don't feel like my image and likeness was, I did not get the bang for my buck. So, I'm going to try to call Ligon. No, I had a phenomenal time there. And I was the director of youth ministry at Pear Orchard Prez.
How was the rookie talent show at RTS?
Rookie talent show there was a little bit more tame, and a little bit more preaching, and less Bill Belichick monologues. So,
so compare Ligon Duncan and Bill Belichick. I think that's important at this point.
Okay, very important. One of them knows how to give a hug, and it's Ligon. And if you've ever received a Ligon Duncan hug, you know what I'm talking about. It's amazing.
It's wonderful.
I've had a male hug, but not a leg hug.
Yeah. Lig smiles a lot more than twice in 4 months. And Ligon's probably not quite as good at dissecting a 20-yard in route on film. So don't hold that against him.
Who looks better in a short sleeve cut off crew neck?
Hey, I saw on the way back from General Assembly, I saw a non-jacket, non-tie wearing Ligon Duncan in the airport. And that's when I knew, now I know this man. And it was Ligon Duncan in the wild. But still repping RTS though. It's awesome. I had a great time at RTS. And doing youth ministry, and the Lord was just teaching me so much, and I just can't believe how much patience people showed me. Learning to preach. Go ahead.
Why did they need patience for you? You weren't like some meathead, knucklehead athlete, were you? I mean, I can't imagine.
I had zero passion. Definitely not a loud voice. Did not get excited at all about youth games. So yeah, they really had to coach me up on.
You broke a lot of stuff, didn't you?
What's the most expensive thing you broke at RTS?
I'm just glad you said at RTS.
Well, you heard we had to move to a new campus. You heard that part, right?
Yeah,
so that gives you an indicator.
People asked if I was part of Deflategate at the Patriots, and all I'm just saying is that there is a common denominator between Deflategate and RTS some of their last years before they move to a different location in Jackson. You're looking at the common denominator. I'll let that do with that as you wish.
So here, I've got to try out a technique on you.
Yes.
Once, many years ago, I was, because of who I worked for and the kind of vehicle I drove, I was a suspect in a vehicle break-in. Now, I didn't do it, and if the police had done their job, they would have known before they ever questioned me that I didn't do it. But I was questioned by the police in the police station.
There's got to be a tape of that somewhere.
Here's the trick they tried to pull on me. Well, I know you didn't do it, but you might know who did. So That's what I'm just saying, Wilson, you weren't really involved in Deflategate, but if you were, or if you knew somebody who was involved, how would that have gone?
I think I'm gonna need some.
Got an NDA here.
Yeah. I don't think I can say.
I'm gonna need to consult with my attorney first.
Yeah.
So if you were gonna theoretically look up how to de-inflate a football at, say, the Watergate Hotel.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say.
Would you do it at night with a flashlight?
Yeah, you just need to talk with my lawyer, Matt Fender, and just direct all questions to him. I'll take him. Yeah, but they were. I just, Carl Calbercamp and John Kwasny especially. Those were just two father figures. Who also just, those men just really ministered to my heart and taught me the gospel. And going back, a lot of that learning to unlearn the very heavy influence of, law, be better, do more to earn, and really kind of shocking me with the grace of God and what covenant theology is, and a proper, three uses of the law, and good law gospel distinctions, the classic indicative imperative. Man, there were just times where I just would have to walk into their office, and especially John Kwasny, and I would just, I'd have to go in there and say, "Can you just tell me again?" And they were just so incredibly patient and gracious, and that taught me more than I can ever relay just of what it meant to pastor someone, what it meant to do, you know, that good Puritan word, the casuistry, and just watching not only people explain the gospel, but apply the gospel. And I like to call it kind of the Genesis 32, Jacob and the angel of the Lord, like that wrestling the grace of God into you. And it was not like what can often happen today at times where, sometimes people, when they say preach the gospel, they don't talk about sin at all. They just go immediately to justification. But then justification is not really that impressive. And the Christ who justifies you is not as impressive because there's not really the weight of sin. Man, these guys, they made me feel like Christian in Pilgrim's Progress, where you feel that burden. And then it was like, whew, remove the burden with the gospel. And it was like, I'm like, this is just so hard. It's so hard to believe this. And I just, those men, for me and my wife, they just, and those men's wives were just incredible. And there was a real turning point my last 2 years there that I think it just really shaped me. And the gospel was I just was learning significantly a whole lot more. And then being around, I was in David Strain let me come spy out their freedom at First Pres Jackson as I snuck into their weekly Westminster Confession of Faith Bible study. And just being in those discussions, I was blowing my mind listening to that.
So you graduate, and did you go into RUF work at Oklahoma State? And did you hang out with that knucklehead football coach out there?
Hey, man,
are you a man? Are you a man? Are you 40?
Hey, I am 33, and I am a real man. Let the record state. I know that's a controversial saying today, but it's true.
Were you required to have a mullet haircut?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see my wife's approach to that if I came home with a mullet. You know, her name is Grace, and it's a very fitting name to be married to me. But that'd be. I'd have to.
I find that hard to believe. Wilson, there's a reason I nicknamed you the golden retriever of the PCA.
Yeah, you know, some have said the golden retriever. Some have said the third Presby girl. So you know, I'm not really.
I think I've said both of those.
Yeah, I think you are actually.
Hold on, Sean. Explain the golden retriever thing, because that's just a dog to me.
Golden retriever. They're just a golden retriever. They're always so happy to see you.
Okay.
They're always enthusiastic, no matter what the day has. No matter what's happened during the day, it could have been the worst day ever. They're still going to find the happiness and the optimism in it. Nothing can go bad. That's Wilson.
So irritating. Irritating. Is that what you're saying?
Full of joy, might slobber on your face a little bit, but gosh darn it, you're happy to see them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just enough slobber,
leaves hair everywhere.
Yes, you know,
lumbering.
Yeah. So, man, those guys just were incredible. And coming up to RUF at Oklahoma State, go Pokes. I did that for 2.5 years, and the Lord just was incredibly gracious to bless that ministry. And I was really cutting my teeth with learning how to, not just preach to my youth large group each week, but preach for RUF large group, and then also go and guest preach other churches, and then obviously, serve the sacraments and do a lot of the commissioner duties in presbytery level and general assembly level. But it was actually really interesting in the summer of 2021, and it was after my first semester of being RUF campus minister. We go to summer conference, and I'm playing volleyball with students, and then we go immediately from there to family vacation. And I begin my body begins to feel weird. And we were going to get some shrimp one afternoon, and it was a little place where you pull a boat up to down Orange Beach, and it's technically in Pensacola, but you pull a boat up to, and you hop off the dock real quick and try to run up there because you can't really park. And so I was the one who was to be the golden retriever. You see what I did there? To retrieve the shrimp. And I get off the boat and I try running, and my brain says run and my body does not. And it was the weirdest sensation in the world. And so when I get back to the condo, I try going into the weight room, and I'm like, man, I just need to like work this out. And I tried jumping, and I'm jumping only like 6 inches. And
Wilson, you'd become white. I'm sorry. I have to.
I finally realized my whiteness, and it just was a delayed reaction. And so ends up in a matter of about 2 weeks, I go from playing sand volleyball to being on a walker and barely being able to get out of bed. And I had developed what's called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I literally was, my body was just breaking down. And it was just the strangest thing where I couldn't climb upstairs. I couldn't wash my hair. I couldn't, they call it hair chair stairs, because you can't wash your hair, can't get up out of a chair, and you can't climb stairs. And it just was the strangest thing. And it was really the season where yet again, I was learning you are far more weak than you ever realized. And I'm supposed to be like raising money and traveling and guest preaching and doing all this stuff. And it's like, nope, that's not going to happen. My wife is like having to do, almost everything around the house. And we have, a young son. And we're still getting to know people in Stillwater. It was very trying. And thankfully, we had a great neurologist here in Stillwater who he immediately just diagnosed me, and we went through treatment and all that. And we had just some very, very gracious people who helped out with that. And but it was once again a really good reminder that, and I keep this cane in my office to beat people up with it. No, I keep it in my office because that's the cane I used when I was recovering. And it's just a reminder that you really are nothing. It is the Lord, who does the work. And so it was another season of really just going back into, realizing who God is and his sovereign grace.
So I've heard of that disease. Was there a trigger, or it's treatable? It goes away. It never comes back.
Beach volleyball. It's the most dangerous game in America.
Yeah, it's it is. So they did, as it were, kind of reset the system and had some IVIG treatment, and they never found you're right. It's a reaction to something else, but they could never solidify what exactly it was. Some thoughts was a tick bite. Some thoughts was just a mild form of COVID that, but I never, at that point, it was like the vaccine was just beginning to be available. So I hadn't had the vaccine at that point. And so it was like, that can't be it. So maybe it was a mild form of COVID, or maybe it was something else. And so it was, it was a really interesting season, but the students at OSU were phenomenal in helping out. And I'd get up in that fall semester, and I'd only be able to stand up for like an hours of time. And so I'd stand up and preach and pretty much sit back down, and students would graciously come up and talk, and I'd sit there and answer questions, but then I'd have to go back home. But then I did that for 2.5 years, and in the just very strange providence of the Lord, I was called to be the senior pastor here at Grace Presbyterian Church in Stillwater. I actually, when the position was available, I had asked the guys, I said, can I call some of my buddies to see if they'd be available? And then they had asked me, and I said, no way. I got a great thing going on here at RUF. I'll help you find a guy. And it's just funny how the Lord works. They came back around again, and they asked me, and I said, okay, like, I'm not going to do it, but I'll go through the interview process. Well, you know how that goes. And so it's now been a little bit over a year into officially being installed as the senior pastor here. And this congregation is just, I love it. They're awesome.
So you know everything by now. I mean, you got all this experience. You should write a book already. That's what guys do now. 1 year, I'm an expert.
My Substack is just riveting with 60s of views, and
dozens of us,
dozens of views. And actually, what's been fun, actually, why I started the Gospel Gazing podcast was just to do it local. And we try to put the local in a local church podcast because sometimes there are babies and dogs in the background. But we have just, this church has just been so sweet. And every church is filled with sinners. Nothing's a utopia. This church has been so sweet. They've been so kind, and they've really taken in the gospel, and they want to learn more. And it has not merely been one of those like, oh, I'm just here ministering. These are the people who are ministering to us, and who are, I mean, I'm actually, I hope it doesn't make you cringe, but we're actually doing life together. I
was hoping it was life on life with lots of loving, with lots of loving on.
Yeah. But and we're just an ordinary Means of Grace church. We do morning and evening worship. We do Sunday school. We do midweek. And any other time I get random phone calls for people wanting to do more discussions, and we shepherd, and I write letters and visit with people, and occasionally I'll have time where I'll knock out a couple of interviews and get Sean on there to help me interview T. David Gordon. And man, it's just, it's all, I mean, I had someone tell me like, man, I don't know who would want to go to Stillwater. No one really wants to go there. I love it. And I mean, Christ shows up every Sunday because he shows up where the word and sacraments are. And we just try to be faithful, and we preach the gospel, and people are being transformed. And they're still wrestling with their sin, and, they're still fighting and all that. They're learning, but man, it's been awesome.
So, as we sort of get ready to wrap up, I'd like for you to, speak to young guys. Now, there probably aren't a lot of PCA guys in the NFL that you can speak to, and there probably aren't a lot of pretty decent football players in college, considering seminary. But if
how many Uncle Ricos do we think there are in the PCA?
Well,
yeah.
Well, and now someone said there's a former big league player, Dan Nolte, up in Michigan.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we look into that. But
Yeah.
anyway, you may not be the only former big time.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think there's a couple other guys. Yeah.
But what I would like you to speak to, and maybe Sean wants to jump in too, just the virtues of the ordinary means of grace. And
Yes.
there are a lot of these, philosophies of ministry, and there's a lot of very ambitious and, maybe more or less misguided ways you could go about, I hate this phrase too, doing ministry,
Yeah.
but just structuring and what you do at church.
Yep.
And that's what I'd like to hear about as we wrap up.
Yeah. And Derek Bright, y'all had a fantastic podcast on this about the doctrine of God. And I just recently got done doing a summer youth conference preaching that. And I preached on the doctrine of God. And one of the things I just kept telling the students when I was talking about the infinity of God and the simplicity of God. Yes, you can preach simplicity to youth students. And one of the things I told them was, God does not need you to be who he is. And because of that, it also means he is self-sufficient. He doesn't look to us to complete something that he can't do on his own, but he graciously, sovereignly, ministers to people through people. But his means of grace, as Dr. Gordon pointed out to us, when we say ordinary, we don't mean, boring or not really that impressive.
That's right.
We mean ordained. And I've seen it in youth ministry, in college ministry, and now at this church. And I've seen it with other churches and other RUFs that when they're actually doing it, those are the churches that are growing. Those are the churches where there's being professions of faith. Because really what we're doing is we are very willing to say, hey, here's a mirror or here's a spotlight. Let me show you your triune God and the gospel of grace. And we trust that that is the power of God for all the stages of our salvation. And, it's been amazing what's been happening. And I don't think I'm necessarily particularly gifted. I've just heard other guys who I just think are just absolutely amazing. But I do think one thing that I've seen is that even with guys who are very gifted or less gifted, but when they're faithful and when they love the Lord and when they love their people and they trust the means of grace, the Lord honors that because that's his plan A and he does not have a plan B. And I think it is time where young guys get back to and older guys too get back to saying, look, the gospel does the work. And I've actually found that people are really tired of, shout out to Brian Cosby in his book Giving Up Gimmicks. But I think people are getting really tired of the gimmicks.
Yeah.
And the things where, do this, be this, and all these things. And there's a lot of people who are just so exhausted. And week after week, morning and evening, we hold out and we say, here's your God. Yes, here's your sin, and it's more than broken. You're shattered, and you can't put yourself back together. Matter of fact, you better stop trying. But here's Christ, and he'll save you, he'll pardon you, and he will empower you to live a life of godliness.
So, I was going to ask, what have you done for the bistro business in Stillwater? Have you redeemed the city is what I want to know.
Yeah. Here's my hot take. The redeem the city model would look at Paul in Thessalonica and say he's a failure. But yet we see that actually Paul was a success because people believe the gospel. And there are times, and I think we just need to make sure we don't confuse the effects of the kingdom with the kingdom itself. We don't confuse the fruit with the root. We don't confuse the power with, the later product that can result. We be faithful, and we teach. We minister the gospel of grace, and we equip students, but then all people to hear is God's word, hear his timeless ethics, regardless of the ethnicity and culture and time and job. It's always his ethics. Now you go and be faithful and apply those and live in light of the gospel where he's called you to. And then come back on Sunday and soak it in again, because you're tore up from the floor up, and you're always at some level going to be that tax collector. And you're going to have to come back again and say, Lord, be propitious to me, the sinner. And he is always there saying, that's literally why I came. Go ahead. Good. Sorry.
No, I just was going to ask Resby if, tore up from the floor up, if that's our new, is that our new catchphrase?
It's already tattooed on my knuckles.
I just think and I've seen it over the years too, even the guest preachers that I've tried to bring in for youth ministry, for college ministry, and then here, I have particularly through the years chosen men, and I rarely give them a time limit. My people might cringe about that. I tell them that my timer on my phone is just to tell me when I should eat next. And I've noticed that regardless of its youth ministry, college ministry, or adult ministry or whatever, when the word of God is preached in the demonstration of the Spirit and power, people will listen. I've seen David Strain preach to youth on Romans 5 for 50 minutes, and no one even budged to look at their phone, not even a seventh grader. I've seen other ministers come into my youth ministry, and I've seen youth students and college students who sometimes will go and hear another preacher, and they will say, that wasn't preaching. When they hear the real thing, they hear it, regardless of someone who has more gifts. But when the power, the grace of God is there, and I think that's just my biggest pet peeve is, do we just trust that God's grace really is powerful? And that it really does transform people. The means of grace.
Well, that's a good word. Anything else those who spend too much time on Twitter, they would want me to ask you if you were a master of the devastating downfield block.
The master of the devastating This is so great. Yeah, I played football very scared. I will be honest.
Who hit you hardest?
When we were playing the Redskins, I was running down, flying down on kickoff, and a tight end who's about 6'5", probably 245, 250, turned around at the last second and lit me up, and I felt like a train had run back and forth over me. I was a scaredy cat. I'm happy to embrace it. That's the only reason why I was fast. So I don't know about master of the downfield block, but more of like, let me at least give you a stumbling block, because I know you're going to run through me.
This is a 3-year Letterman reference. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Oh, no.
Okay.
He's a high school youth football coaching legend. I'm shocked you haven't heard of him.
Who are you talking about?
No, it's a Twitter account, very popular.
Oh, it is. Oh,
he's hilarious.
Yes.
Hilarious.
He's a Georgia guy, so
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
No, I'd heard a story one time. Is like from another former player is like, if you watch a football game, the moment there are 15 minutes left in the first quarter, and guys are already watching the clock because the game just hurts so bad. Like you're just waiting for it to be done.
Yeah.
And
one Brad, here's one thing I've learned actually is one of the reasons why I don't tell people that I played for the Patriots is I have learned that whenever I go guest preach, or even at times when I can use like stories in my own church, people will not come ask me about Jesus afterward. They will ask me if I've caught passes from Tom Brady.
Oh yeah.
And I actually at that youth conference I did not long ago, some of the kids ended up finding out, and then it kind of spread around. And I had changed up my sermon intro at the last second, and I was preaching on Philippians 3, and Paul saying, whatever gain I had, I consider as lost. You know, Christ is my righteousness. And so I named my whole resume, and I said, including the Patriots, and I said, yes, I caught passes from Tom Brady. And you might think that's impressive, but that is literally worth dung. What matters is if you have Christ. And it is so disheartening when you can preach your heart out and you hold out the free grace of God, and then the only thing they want to do is come up to you afterward and ask, did you catch passes from Tom Brady? And so that's often why I've kept it quiet is, you know, and then also too, I just always need to watch my own pride. So.
Well, that's
Chortles gets that a lot when people come up to him and they ask what working with me is like.
Yep, it's always about you. Well, we have wives. They tend to be good pride suppressors.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we're thankful you're among us. However, you got here to be with us, and people can check you out at Gospel Gazing, and maybe we won't explain the name. They'll just have to figure that out.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll pique their interest.
Yeah.
Sean, thanks for being with us. Thanks for not, like some of our friends, if I invited them on the show, they would talk too much, and you didn't do that. You're a very humble guy. That's what everyone says about Sean. Very humble. And especially his wife, Sarah. And Resby, you have the humble task of, kind of preaching us out, as you always do.
Yeah. We, we're going to kneel it out in the fourth quarter. This is the official victory formation. So I have to ask, Gospel Gazing, is that because the sky in Stillwater during a Cowboys football game is the blackest sky in the entire known universe?
Resby, you're my favorite. You are my favorite. It's not. It has to do with 2 Corinthians 3:18. But 10 points to Gryffindor for you saying that. That's just hey, you can come to Stillwater anytime.
I honestly, I would love to. I would love to go to a football game at Oklahoma State.
We'll have some Eskimo Joe's cheese fries waiting on you.
Sounds tremendous. Yeah, I just it's one of those things. The Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, at least the Big 12 of old is like, I just want to watch a game with zero defense and an aggregate score of 180. And Stillwater provides in ways soothing to the soul on Saturdays.
We teach our kids to do this. We do not do this. This is heresy. We do this.
Exactly.
He's given the touchdown sign there.
Yeah. But again, thank you everyone for listening, watching along. I think this is aside from a select few, this is probably the most family members of any one guest that we've ever had in the live chat during an episode as well. So shout out to Wilson's wife and mother for holding their own tonight. That was a really impressive feat. Yeah, they get their own horn. But no, great show. We're stringing some wins together, Chortles. I feel like with the last couple episodes that we've done, it's good to do good episodes. So thank you everyone for listening. trying to think. Can I squeeze like one more? I don't. Nah, I don't have one more football reference to make, but well, go watch The Replacements because it's the best football movie ever. But before you do that, and while you're doing that, please don't be an Erdman.